Okay, we're live. Welcome to another Nerd Stalker interview. Good morning. This is Greg Gloria, aka Social Greg on Twitter for the Nerd Stalker Media Network. Today we'll be helping people with their elevator speech. So we talk with Nicole Lininger, right? Lininger?
Lininger.
Lininger. Okay, sorry. I should
That's
have even
okay.
asked you for that. Yeah, Director of Corporate Communications at InventHelp, leading inventor service company, which helps people get their ideas reviewed. And we'll have Nicole talk a little bit about that at the end. Nicole will, kind of tell you today the 10 do's and don'ts for your elevator speech, as well as give you some help around how to deliver your elevator speech and maybe consider the audience for your elevator speech in developing your elevator speech. So anyway, good morning, Nicole, and thank you for joining us on Nerd Soccer Live from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, right?
Good morning. Yes, I'm in Pittsburgh.
How's the weather out there today?
It's beautiful. I'm going to move my office outside, I think.
Well, yeah, I think because with this wireless world we work in, you could do that
I'm
very
going to do it.
easily. Anyway, so thanks for talking to us today about elevator speeches, because I think it's a valid topic today as it was years ago when they first talked about that. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about a key. It's a key element in networking, obviously. And I was always trained at the 60-second elevator speech, or at least that's what they always told us. I took Dale Carnegie, and they talk a little bit about that. But is that still true today?
I would say it is true. I think sticking to 60 seconds, I always say between a minute and 2 minutes. I would never go over more than 2 minutes. Because I think you have the potential then to lose people. But I think 60 seconds is always great because that will then leave you time for feedback from your audience. And I think if you go on too long, then you could potentially lose them and then potentially not get any feedback.
Oh, I see. I see. Yeah, I think that's interesting because, in a way, when we meet people, right, there's always an opportunity to have that type of elevator speech, right? I mean, you don't have to be in a convention or, at a real networking event. I mean, just in real life, right, you're going to use this, right?
Right, right. I mean, you could be in line at Starbucks and overhear a conversation, and next thing you know, you're giving your elevator pitch to someone. That you weren't even thinking that was going to happen. So there's always real life examples and things that can happen and give you the opportunity to pitch your product.
Well, let's go through your list here. Let's
Okay.
talk about the do's and don'ts of elevator speeches. So, why don't you just kind of hit some of the top points you want to tell us today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing you want to do, the first do would be to start with a great hook. We were just talking about the direct response television industry and the, infomercial industry. How many times have you been sitting at home watching and you see the commercial of the real life example? Have you ever tried to give your dog a bath and they run through the yard? It always starts with this with this question, and you're sitting at home saying, geez, I that did actually happen to me. Next thing you know, you're picking up the phone. So that kind of goes hand in hand with the elevator pitch. You want to grab your listeners' attention and you want to be able to pull them in. And again, you want to do that in a couple seconds.
Wow. When you say a couple seconds, that seems like so much pressure. I
I
think
know.
people psych themselves out with this thing. I know that, when I tell them about that, they look at me like, how am I going to do that? But,
Right.
but I think you're going to go into some other things that'll help that, right?
Yes, absolutely. And, 9 times out of 10, this product, obviously I work with inventors, so I kind of take things from a product and that kind of standpoint. 9 times out of 10, your product does solve a problem. That's why, as an inventor, you came up with it. And literally in one sentence, you can probably explain to someone, what kind of problem this product solves. So once you've delivered the hook, you kind of want to then dive into, what that problem, what this invention is going to solve for you. And one thing I always say is inventors are consumers. And it sounds really basic, but it's true. They are very creative people and they will go to the store to look for a product, and when they can't find it on the store shelves, that's when they go home and say, I'm going to invent this. And so, like I said, a lot of products that I see that inventors come up with, they solve a problem. So you really want to kind of, stick to that quick hook, and then go into the value proposition as to what this product, what the problem is that's going to solve.
And the value proposition, what I found, Nicole, when I talk to people, or the entry question to the elevator speech is, so Nicole, what do you do? Right. Yeah, and that's your entry, right? But a lot of times is that sometimes some inventions can be somewhat complicated, right? So
right.
Yeah, how do you get these guys to kind of concise that part there?
Well, a lot of the inventors that I work with, obviously the range of inventions, you can have a basic household product all the way up to a very technical, piece of technology. So it's a little easier, obviously, if you've got a basic household product that you're trying to describe. Like I said, giving your dog a bath, that's pretty easy, hiding the dirty dishes in the sink. I've seen it all. And these are products that are, again, a little easier to describe. If it's a more technical invention, again, it kind of falls on the inventor or the creator to really figure out a way to simplify that idea so that the common person who's listening to the pitch will be able to understand and be able to figure out what it does quickly. So you always want to have data to back up your claims. So for example, once you kind of ask the person what their pain points are, and you tell them what this problem is, what this is going to solve, you kind of want to have some data and statistics to back that up and explain why this invention is going to solve that problem. And you want to just be able to, while you're doing this, be energetic and make sure that you haven't lost the person's attention quickly. Because sometimes you may start your pitch and the person may say, oh, I don't work in that industry, and walk away. So your goal is to try to keep them engaged, even if they work in a different industry altogether.
That makes sense. Yeah, no,
So,
I totally get that. Yeah,
you've
go ahead.
got an automotive product and you're talking to somebody who makes pots and pans. There might not be a connection there, but you never know. There may be. So the goal is to try to keep everybody engaged. And you want to be able to, if you have a website, I always suggest making sure you throw that out as well, because again, someone may remember that, and or let's say you have a crowdfunding website, throw that out so that way a person can then leave and go get some more information.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say that about the informational part. Check out my website at www, or hey, I just started a Kickstarter campaign. You could just look it up at and people kind of sometimes rush through that with me, and then I totally miss it. So the card is going to be very important and all that type of stuff. But those are good points. Yeah, go ahead and keep on going down your list here.
Yeah. Business cards are very important. And I always tell inventors that you can literally go to Kinko's and spend, $20 and get a stack of business cards. They don't have to be perfect. They literally can have your name and your phone number and your, email and website, and at least something to hand to a business person that you're giving this pitch to, especially when you're in a trade show forum. Obviously, I work in trade shows and go to a lot of trade shows. I always try to coach inventors two things. One, to make sure that they do have a business card, because the thing they have to remember is, while this invention or new product is the most important thing to them, that business person that they're talking to, that business attendee, has to go to 300 booths and is, collecting information from a lot of different people. So you're not the only person that they're talking to. And on the flip side, I always tell inventors to make sure they get a business card from the person that they're speaking to, and write a note on the back of the business card, because once you leave that forum, even again, if you are in line at Starbucks, write down a couple bullet points about the conversation, because you might think you'll remember, but sometimes you don't.
No, absolutely. I think when you're at a convention like yours, where you have hundreds of booths, it'll slowly blur after the first 10
Yes.
or 15, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I've had this happen many times where I've had attendees actually call me, business attendees call me and say their luggage got lost on the way home and they lost all of their business cards and everything that they collected. So that's why it's so important for the inventor to make sure that they have proper notes as well, because they could be waiting to hear back from someone and the person lost the cards. So that's just that's maybe not necessarily in the do's and don'ts of the elevator pitch, but I think that's an important lesson for inventors to know when they're starting out. You have to stay organized and make sure that like I said, a business card is really important.
Yeah, and these devices these days is one of your friends, so you could get a lot of apps that allow you to scan business
And
cards for this guy. So
yes,
yeah.
yes,
All
absolutely.
right, let's
Yeah. So
continue down the list here.
those are some do's, and then regarding some don'ts, you want to forget don't forget to practice. And it's really important to again, trade shows are a good way to practice, but you can also family, friends, like I said, in random places. The thing you have to remember with family and friends is they may be biased. So they may tell you it's an amazing idea.
Yeah,
So
just a little bit biased.
right. If you're my family, they'd probably say no, it's not. They tend to be honest. But you have to kind of take what they say with a grain of salt. But it's a great way to practice. But you have to keep in mind, again, if you pitch your product to your family and friends and they tell you that it's the most amazing thing they've ever seen, you can't be disappointed then if you go to a trade show and maybe you don't get that same type of feedback from the general public or from businesses. But again, that is a great way to practice.
Well, I had a question for you about that. In your experience, I know it probably varies by person, but how many times do you think a person will go through their elevator speech and finally feel comfortable? In your experience.
Oh, I think it could be hundreds of times. Honestly, I mean, it really could. And we were kind of trying to help inventors. We had Shark Tank. The show Shark Tank was at our show this year, and the inventors literally got 60 seconds to go in front of the casting crew to pitch their product. So we were trying to make them understand how important that 60 seconds really is, because after that, you're done. And it takes a lot of practice to really fine tune exactly what you want to say and to really sell it and get the main points across. So yeah, I would say it takes a while to get it, but once you get it, you're golden.
Wow. Okay. All right. I better go about another 999 to go.
Practice.
I better go to Starbucks a lot this week. Anyway, let's go down the list of don'ts.
Yes. So the next don't is you don't want to oversell your idea. That's one big mistake that inventors make. Is you don't want to oversell the benefits. You don't want to use words like revolutionary or life-changing, especially for an inventor who hasn't manufactured the product yet. So you may want to stick to conditional tense. This would do this. This could do this. We tend to do that with our inventors who were just starting out. They're in the early stage. Maybe they don't even have a prototype. You don't really know if this product hasn't been tested or manufactured yet, what it's going to do. So you kind of have to be careful about overblowing the potential of the product if you don't know yet. It's almost like that black box theory. Can this even work? You don't know. So you have to kind of think about that.
So it's kind of like an honesty but positive approach towards your product, right?
Right, exactly. And I always try to stay away from even obviously the revolutionary, those overblown buzzwords, but even like the saves money, this is going to save you money. Again, sometimes you don't know that. And so I try to, we try to stay away from hypey type words like that. Because you just don't know.
And I think a lot of when people pitch me on ideas. We have a lot of startups here, and they ask for my services, but part of it is when I ask them, so what does your company do, or um, I think a lot of times, I wanted to ask you about this on because sometimes they use adjectives that kind of imply, like they'll say, well, it has the potential to, or how do you feel about when someone says that to you, where it seems like you're unsure, but it also leaves you a little bit questioning about, is their product really viable, when they use those words, right?
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. I would, you kind of have to walk the line on that between not overblowing, but also I agree with you. When you use those words like it has the potential to, it kind of leaves the listener questioning a little bit as to whether the product really is going to do what the inventor, says. It almost kind of makes the inventor look like they're not sure and they're almost a little uneducated about the product.
Right.
So I agree. I would almost kind of stay away from, from those types of buzzwords, just because, I think it can almost go the opposite way.
Yeah. Like you said, it's a fine line, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. I think it's always a little easier if an inventor has already manufactured the product and they have it in front of them. They at least know that it is going to deliver X, Y, Z.
Yeah, I always like those guys, like take it out of their pocket or jacket, if it's small enough, obviously,
Right.
and
Right.
then say, hey, oh yeah, I have it right here. See,
Right.
this is what it is,
Right.
I'm pretty impressed by that.
Another thing that you want to do is obviously, and we talked about this in the do's, that you do want to have data to back up your claims, but you don't want to bury the listener in data. I think if you're just throwing out too many numbers to someone and you're throwing out all of these different claims and data, that you may potentially lose the person because it just may be too much for them to take in. Sometimes your brain is just trying to process one thing at a time. And if an inventor's throwing too many statistics out, you may end up losing them. So I would say to maybe pick one or two quick bullet points that are data driven, but, just kind of stay away from giving your listener too much data, because again, in 60 seconds to 2 minutes, if you're just throwing out statistics, it's going to, you're going to get that like blurred look by the person who's listening.
Now, do you suggest, like, in the middle of the elevator speech, to kind of get reaffirmance from the person? Like, does that make sense? Or, how do you feel about that type of interaction when you're doing your elevator speech?
I think I think that's fine. And I think that, I think one of the questions that we had talked about or going to ask is, kind of using the audience to, gauge, where you are in the elevator pitch. And I think that a lot of times you can quickly gauge where the person is, that you're giving the presentation to, and whether you should continue, whether you should not, so I think it's fine to do that, to kind of ask a question halfway through. And I think you can quickly tell if the listener is engaged or if they've now gone somewhere else.
Yeah, they're looking beyond you or something.
The next
like
move.
that.
Yes, exactly. So, that usually will tell you whether you need to wrap it up or not.
No, it's good. I appreciate that. I think that's good advice, because I think that I see a lot of people are very mechanical with their, and that's why I guess with their elevator speeches, because I guess that's why you say it could take hundreds of times, because once it feels comfortable, then you kind of know. I don't know. I know when I explain some things to people, I kind of know that, oh, I got this down finally.
Right. And like I said, it's always about finding the fine line between, like you said, being too mechanical on one end or being so over the top on the other end that you turn the person off as well.
Yeah,
so it's like, you've got to find that conversation, where you're just kind of engaging with the person and you've been able to draw them in without being obnoxious, really.
Absolutely.
And so, a couple more don'ts. Don't ignore your competitors. I think it's important to, mention your competitors. You don't necessarily have to mention their products by name, but you can, communicate that your product may be better than some of the other products on the market. Again, you don't have to mention their exact names, but I think it's important for the listener to know that your product could potentially replace another product on the market. I mean, we all know, we've all heard this, that, for example, if you want to get your product in Walmart, there's only so much shelf space. And everybody says, I want my product to be in Walmart, or I want it to be in Target. Well, you're fighting for, 12 inches of space in that product line, whatever it is. And so you've got to be better than the next guy to be able to, remove that product and get your product in on that space, because a lot of times that's really what it comes down to is shelf space. So I think it's important to let your listener know that this product could potentially replace XYZ, and it's better because of these reasons.
Yeah, that's a big PR no. I think. I mean, you're the director of communications at your company, so you know what this is all about. I know a lot of times when I'm shooting interviews, especially on location, not necessarily like this, but on location, they'll mention a competitor, and I actually have to stop the camera. And I said, I mean, I could edit this. I told them, we're not doing it live like this, right? So the potential is a little bit less. But I agree with you. I think mentioning competitors brings up a lot of red flags, I think, to a lot of people, because why are they trying to sell this too hard? Why are they trying to compare this? And especially if it's a bigger brand. I mean, whoa.
Right. It just could take a negative turn. It could end up in turn making you look negative when that's not what you're trying to do. So yeah, I think, again, it's a delicate balance. But, again, when you start mentioning names, then, and again, when you're the little guy, when you're the inventor who's got one product and you're throwing out a huge name or huge brand, again, it the potential is there to make you look negative.
That's very true.
Yeah. And so the last don't really is, don't forget the call to action, the call to action. In the end, your elevator pitch, it's a sales pitch. So you kind of want to leave people, figuring out what is the next opportunity, what's significant opportunity here? What should the listener do next if they're interested? Kind of goes back to the whole website thing. That's really the good time to give them your card, potentially get their card, say, hey, I'm going to follow up with you, or, let's schedule a follow-up in a week, that kind of thing. But again, it is a sales pitch. So you want to try to, close them at the end after you've given them all of this information.
I wanted to ask you, before we close off the interview, I think that was another great tip, is the closing. Going back to when we're talking a little bit about the audience, I'm just kind of reflecting back on how I did it. I mean, I was a product manager, so I was at trade shows a lot. And, that gauge thing that you had mentioned earlier in our interview here is so important. It's like, am I talking to the CEO or am I talking to a decision maker in the company? I mean, how does audience play into your elevator speeches? Do you kind of coach these people that you may have to adjust it if it's a C-level executive versus, someone else? I mean, how do you
Absolutely. I think for the most part, for inventors, I think it needs to stay fairly, the same. But I agree. You have to, and we do the same thing. We go to trade shows and we'll walk into a booth and, because our goal is obviously to meet companies who are interested in looking at new products. And when you walk into a booth, like you said, if you're dealing with the vice president of research and development or the new product director, or you're dealing with a sales manager, our pitch may be different because the sales manager may not be someone that can help us, but the vice president of R&D can. So it's the same with an inventor, but I kind of tell them to keep it, about the same. But again, you can quickly gauge whether, if they're in your booth, you're walking into theirs, you can quickly gauge if this is someone that is a decision maker. And you can always say, if you're not the person, I don't know if you handle this or not. Do you know who the person I should talk to? Who should I talk to? That I always suggest doing that. We do that because, again, that person might not be the correct person for you to talk to, but they know who is. And that's okay to ask them. And 9 times out of 10, they'll say, oh, well, you know what? I have their card here. I'll give it to you. You can follow up with them. Or they'll say, here, let me write it down for you. And, that happens all the time.
No, I like that. Wow. Well, I appreciate like this, quick tips on do's and don'ts here, and we'll try to close off the interview. You know, yeah, a lot of great tips you told us in the last 20 minutes on this topic, because I think it's an important topic, because that's the entry for a lot of inventors to get noticed, as well as you know talk about their product and talk very positively, as you said, about their product. So we appreciate that here on Nerd Stalkers. So anyway, we'll close off the interview. So how can listeners get a hold of you and ask you more questions about elevator pitches?
Absolutely. You can go to our website, which is inventhelp.com. And, we have a media at inventhelp.com email address, or they can email me personally. Also, I'm on Twitter at invention_show, Facebook. Like I said, email me at nlininger@inventhelp.com, and I'd be happy to help anyone who needs it.
No, thank you. I appreciate the time, and hey, you might want to talk a little bit about your show that you hold every year. You just held it, I think, this last early summer, and then it's going on for next year. Impex, right?
Correct. Yes. Impex, we're the largest trade show for inventors in the country, and it's held here in Pittsburgh every year. Like I said, since this is our national headquarters, and it'll be June 7th through the 9th, 2016. So we already have the date set. And it's a 3-day show, and it's a great opportunity for inventors to really present their product, to do exactly what we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes. So to present their product to companies who are looking for new products.
Oh, that's great. No, thanks again, Nicole. I appreciate it. And anyway, thanks for joining us, everyone. This is Greg Valoria, AK Social Greg, on Twitter for the Nerd Stalker Media Network, where we believe in tech, startups, design, and you. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and be careful out there. Hey, thanks, Nicole. Appreciate it.
Thank you. See you later.